See, now it's take 5. Episode 5. Now it's actually take 5. You ready?
I'm ready.
Here we go. Feeling the vibe. Pretty good energy. I'm feeling it. Welcome back, everybody, to the We Love Money podcast. My name is Alex. I am joined here by John. John, did I mention that I'm a CFP?
No, I had no idea you were a CFP.
I don't know if anybody knew that, so I had to mention it really quickly. And today we are back to talk about some money. Are you ready to go, John?
I'm always ready.
Are you going to hijack my meeting like last time?
No, today I'm going to actually step aside and let you take a shot at it.
You didn't do any prep work. That's what
I
that
didn't do
tells
any
me.
prep work this time. I got to be honest. I think today we just go with the flow.
Today we just go with the flow and put it all on Alex. Well, luckily this morning I, on the fly, came up with some interesting things to talk about, so hashtag you're welcome for that.
Thank you. Wait. On the fly?
Dude, on the fly. As you know, I had the family in town, so it's been a wild couple of days, but we got some topics to talk about. I'm ready to roll if you are ready to discuss it, my man.
Let's go.
Oh gosh, where's my list? All right, here we go. So what I want to talk about today, to start us out here, John, is I want to talk about the news, right? Just handling the news in general, because I think that we've talked on this pod a little bit already about immersing yourself and resources that are available to you. But realistically, when it comes down to it, like, there really isn't a all-knowing, correct, right source to get your information from, right? All these companies have their own financial interests. They all don't really know what they're talking about necessarily, so that's what I want to talk about here today, because I think obviously we kind of get our information from them, from all these different sources, but I think there's an element of take it with a grain of salt, and I want to get your thoughts on kind of that statement right there.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it multiple times on this podcast about citing and checking your sources, and I do the same thing as you just said. Take it with a grain of salt. If I see something on the news, I try my best to fact check it.
But even something you can't even fact check it, right? Because
I mean you can.
I mean, like, for example, like if someone says, let me give you an example. Like we're watching the news and you're watching information about like the fallout of the terror situation, right? None of them have any clue, so you can't like fact check them and like know who's right and who's wrong based off of what they're saying up there. Sometimes you can't even fact check, right? Sometimes it's literally just like I need to like listen to what they're saying, think about it, listen to what other people are saying, think about it, and kind of like make my own determination here. Right?
Well, I think that's kind of what I mean by fact check. I mean, that was probably a poor choice of words, but I guess what I mean is just hearing it from multiple sources, of just hearing the news from different platforms, different stations. Even if you don't agree with those stations, again, we said it before, each news station is kind of has its own agenda. They're very politically skewed, so it's hard to, just listen to Fox News and say, okay, this is just it, or the way they're saying it is correct, or, CBS.
I mean, 100%, you should definitely have multiple sources, right? But to
regardless of your political views.
Of course. I mean,
you
should not be drinking all of your knowledge from one host. Again, you should be getting the different, like I said, opinions and just being able to balance it out, because when it comes to making money, you don't want to hear what you want to hear, right? You want to hear everything. You want to hear all sides. You want to hear the good and the bad. You don't want to hear just like what you want to hear.
Yep.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think that it's difficult to do when it comes to our money, right? Because I think that we want things to go a certain way. Like we kind of like, when we get into like our investing, we want to be right? So I think that we tend to flock towards things that are going to like kind of affirm what we already think. But like when you're watching the news, that really is the only place to get your information. So getting different exposure to different people's opinions might just make you at least like sit and think and like think about something, and then be able to be like maybe I didn't think about this all the way through. And let me just think about it a little further before I make my actual ultimate decision.
It's all about the wording and how it's described, and again, people's opinions. And you might find yourself leaning towards the opinion of this newscaster or this station because of that information. Oh, that makes sense, actually. Oh, yeah, I didn't think about it that way. Or, ooh, it's different from what Joe Schmo said
Yeah.
20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
You know?
And I
Which gives you creative thinking. It gives your mind the gears to work and really fine-tune something that works for you. I mean, just because one person has an opinion on something and another person doesn't mean you have to go all in or nothing on each one. You can take an opinion on this person's view on this particular component and take another's and kind of fuse it together, where it's like, okay, like, take the politics out of it and just focus on what they're saying and take the good and try to your best to weed out the bad.
100%. And I think there's so many voices in this space that it's almost like a disservice to yourself to not explore them, because if you literally step into the world and you are listening to one source of information and that's all you're really getting, there may be ones that you personally would like way, way better, might agree with way, way more, but you just haven't really been able to be exposed to them. And I feel like not only is that the way you find them, but I feel like, again, like even furthermore, just being able to like think things through in like a level-headed manner, you want both sides of the coin.
You have to have it. I have a family member who distinctly listens to one news group and one news group only. And I'm glad that they're watching the news, but it has made their opinions completely skewed. And the problem with that is, again, there is some avenues of what they're saying. Maybe what it is that they personally agree with. But there's a lot of things, and I know this person, that I know they wouldn't actually agree with, but they're agreeing with it anyway because this is the organization that they are solely into.
Yep.
And it's completely changed. And it's happening. They're not even realizing.
Yeah, and it's not their fault. Like even
no, it's not.
From the standpoint other than what we're kind of saying. What we're saying is get your you take multiple perspectives and at least hear them. If you don't have to agree with them, even if like you outrule the other ones you listen to, and you still end up really going with the one that you were with in the first place. Just hearing the other opinions. So that is, I think, where some fault lies in here, is not like giving yourself the ability to hear other opinions, but beyond that, right? Kind of to our point, this is where you're getting your information. So if you are only getting it from one source, or even if you're getting it from multiple, if they're misleading you or you're interpreting that a certain way, and that's leading you down this path, that's not even your fault. You know what I mean? Because the news is dramatic, man. The news, that's the other side of this kind of that I want to talk about, right? Is that this news, what you got to realize about the news in general is this is a business. They need to say something every day. If they don't have something to say that day, they don't make money. So they're going to come up with something to say. And they're going to try to make everything more dramatic than it needs to be. And so to the point, going back to the original statement we're making, is that it's not even these people's fault, right? It's not anyone in particular's fault when they start to feel so extremely one way, because that's how the news is designed. Right, it's designed to make it extreme, to make you want to watch it.
And they want the people just tuning into their station. You know, it's
yeah, it's a bloodbath. It's a competition.
It's bigger for them. It's going to benefit them the most. So they're going to do whatever they can to shove whatever it is that they're talking about, whether it's the truth or whether it's good or it's bad content, down your throats.
Yeah, and that's why some of the ones that we've mentioned. That's why I really like CNBC in particular. I like CNBC because when you watch them on there, a lot of the anchors they have on there, they do a really great job of basically just like putting whoever's in the chair, and they get a lot of really notable people on that channel because of how like notable it is. But I love how they do a good job putting the people in the hot seat. If someone's being negative and there's positive narrative out there, they throw that right in their face and basically put them in question that. And on the flip side, if someone's being the opposite, they're being really, really positive, and there's negative stuff out there, they're going to get out there and be like, but what about this? Look at this. Everyone's saying, like, how do you explain that? You know what I mean? And they definitely push both sides of that narrative, and I really enjoy that piece of their content. But even then, again, like, you just got to be careful because, again, these guys, none of them know, right? They're using their previous experience, and the world's an ever-changing place, and you just got to take it all with a grain of salt.
100%.
Yeah.
Well said. It's the truth.
Yeah, and so that kind of takes me to the second thing that we'll kind of like blend our two topics in here together.
Ooh,
the second.
blend.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of just like talk about it freely, but when you're listening to the news and you're looking at the stock market, the news, sorry, not the news. The stock market and the economy are two different things. That's the second thing I want to like kind of discuss and touch on here in this pod here today, is that when you're watching the news and they're telling you this is deteriorating and we're watching these indicating factors, and that is all separate from the stock market. The economy can look one way and the stock market not necessarily be in line with it. People, a lot of times, they think to themselves,
they're together.
The stock market is doing well, that means the economy is doing well. They're two different things. The stock market is a market driven off of supply and demand, and you can bet your butt that the economy affects the supply and demand of that market. But if the participants of the market are behaving in a certain way, that can totally detach itself from a deteriorating economy where people are just stepping into harder times, debts are right. Again, there's two separate things. What do you think about that, John?
I mean, I definitely agree that it is separate. I do think, I mean, one can affect the other, though.
Of course it can.
And it does. And I think when you're, again, mirroring back on discussion with the news, I mean, I don't know. Do you think that the news kind of impacts the market more?
No, I mean, I definitely,
right? Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the news reports on the economy absolutely affects the stock market.
Yeah, that's the word. Yeah, that was the word.
Because the stock market, right? The stock market, they're trying to, so the stock market, the way that it functions, again, it's all based off supply and demand, and they're trying to interpret the data, right? So the news, these news stations and all these, like, they have teams and teams of people that are on the phone with the people who know this information as early as possible, and they're interpreting it, and they have sending it back to their analysts, and they're so all this information that's coming out, you're like watching them in real time try to interpret that data. And that's when you watch the market get really volatile, start swinging the way that it is right now, is because they don't really know, no one really knows what's going on, right? So they're trying to just interpret this data, and they really, when you start to get into those circumstances where it's like, we don't know which way it's going to go, you start to see the gamblers really start to poke their heads out, because there's a lot of money to be made in those types of circumstances. When a market's going to break one way or the other, if you can be on the front end of that,
you're going to make a killing.
You can make a killing. So again, really it starts to push. So, and that's where, again, like, you watch people like me, and that's where, not even just me, like, I think people in general are like, once the market gets really volatile, they lock into the news. So absolutely, the news is going to like start pushing the market one way or the other. Like I remember when the market got really volatile and I was watching CNBC every morning, they were even saying, like, our viewer ratings are like higher than they've ever been. More people are watching us right now than ever before, right? So again, so that's where everyone's going to get their information from. And that's where it kind of goes back to getting different sources and interpreting it all, because you need going to like the underlying message of this business and this podcast, you need to take ownership here. Like, you need to get involved here and have an opinion, right? This whole like mentality of, I don't know anything about this, I'm going to defer to the people who do, like, it's so dangerous. It just puts you in such a vulnerable position.
Yep.
Where you're left not knowing what to do and holding the bag, and the people who know what they're doing are just going to like eat you up.
Especially when it's your money. I mean, you should be treating it like it's in some way your baby.
Of course.
It is yours. Like, we work day and night, we earn what we earn, and we need to cherish that. We have to have respect for the dollar.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you don't, then like you said, the people at the top are just going to completely eat you alive.
And when
We've seen market swings that are completely controlled by people who have really high stakes. One person can impact a drastic change.
no doubt about it. No, absolutely.
And it's like, again, you have to claim responsibility for yourself. Do it for you. Do it for the family. Do it for the people you care about.
And see, and that right there is the point that I was about. I'm glad I let you just keep going, because that's what these people are doing at the top.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking out for themselves and their families, and as long as everybody is like simpatico and this to get like everyone's going in the same direction, yeah, you all can coexist and everyone's going to be friends and everyone's going to be happy. But when the going gets tough, these people who know what they're doing, we're human beings. They're going to, I'm talking like the high up investors, even the financial planners, you know what I mean? Again, at the end of the day, like, of course we're going to do what's in our fiduciary interest, but you definitely should arm yourself with knowledge. That way you can use your financial planner to the fullest. That way you cannot be left waiting for them to tell you what to do. Again,
not be swayed by things that are irrelevant to making your decisions.
Of course. Again, exactly. Again, at the end of the day, if you're going to come up with something and bring something to their attention, because you know it's going to, you should be able to be confident in that and be able to know when I'm hearing what you're saying, I'm saying this, let's come to an, again, because I've said it before and I'll say it again, I just really don't like it when you go to a planner and you're looking to them to tell you what to do. It should be a collaboration. It should be a discussion. You should be able to articulate, what is important to me, what my concerns are. And the reality is any good financial planner knows they don't know what's going to happen. They're going to take your concerns into consideration and it will be a collaboration. But if you aren't immersing yourself in this and you're not taking in multiple sources, you're not going to be able to do any of that with your financial planner. You're going to be left in a position where you have no choice but to sit there and look at them and be like, you tell me what to do.
And remember, guys, people have been studying the markets for generations, and they get it wrong. So
every day.
Every single day it happens. Do they get stuff right too? Yes, but the fact that they get stuff wrong tells you, just as Alex mentioned, we're human. Mistakes happen. And so arming yourself gives you an extra layer of protection.
Yeah.
And just giving you insight. And again, it'll help you. It'll help you change your perspective on your goals, what you want to accomplish. Again, you brought up concerns. These are your concerns. You can back those concerns just by paying attention and immersing yourself versus just saying I have concerns, but not really being able to explain the details.
Of course.
Which again, there are some great financial advisors and great planners out there. There's also ones that are not so great and may not have your best interest at heart. It's a business.
Unfortunately,
we
they probably
talked about it with the news.
Probably are out there. Yes.
That is the same across every single industry you look at.
Yeah.
You have people who genuinely do care. I believe good people always out there, but it is naive to believe that everyone is going to be like that.
100%.
And you have to do what you can for yourself to not be taken advantage of and to make sure you're making the strategic, smart choices based on your situation.
Yep. And furthermore, dude, it's not even, again, because obviously, hopefully they're few and far between, but I definitely think those, bad guy financial planners out there, they do exist, you know what I mean? But even further beyond that, even the good guy ones. There's going to be times where, so a financial planner is trained and taught to advise to you in a mold, right? In a starter mold. Now, the goal is for that mold to stray as far into a personalized version of itself for you personally as possible. But that personalization depends on you, not on the advisor. The advisor is trained to do it in a mold, and if you're not coming to the table with ways to utilize that advisor, very rarely are they going to extract this stuff out of you without you doing a dang thing. So even the good guy ones are not going to really be able to steer you in this necessarily your personal, what's best for you personally, your best interests, without your involvement there. You know what I mean? And so you need to be able to take that ownership, because they're not going to be able to guide you in the way that you personally maybe need to be guided if you're not involved enough to be able to put them in a position to do that.
Again, it's the ugly truth.
It is. I mean,
we wish it wasn't that way.
and I think it comes back to what we're trying to do here, is because it's really not super accessible. Even the accessible stuff is hard to understand. We don't have the baseline knowledge to really be able to interpret it. So going back to our original topic here, we sit there and we watch this drama-filled news, because that's what it is nowadays, and we have no human beings. We're human. The emotions, like when you don't understand something, and people are talking really extremely about it, and you know it's going to affect you, and you don't understand it, that's going to invoke a lot of emotion. You know what I mean? Like, imagine if it was like your safety. It was like your safety is at jeopardy. You don't understand why. You don't really know. Like, how anxious is that going to
No,
make
it's
you? You know
terrible.
what I mean? So
And again, what have we discussed before on the first few podcasts? Emotion can drive bad choices.
and that's where it kind of comes back to like the beginning of this whole discussion today, is the news is going to draw that out of you. That's literally what it's designed to do. That the reason we recommend things like Yahoo Finance, like CNBC, is because, in my opinion, those are going to be your least emotional and your most data-driven news sources, right?
It has to be.
Of course.
It has to be. They have to report on earnings. They have to discuss what's happening with the company. They have to. There's no BS.
Yep. Still very difficult to interpret, but there's no BS in there, and that's a perfect way to put it. So that's why we recommend those. So if you're watching those, even those,
I guess less BS.
Definitely, I would agree with that.
I'm sure there's still BS in there.
You're
But
100%. There'll always be BS in the news. But even with those, right, even with the ones that we're recommending, listen to multiple opinions. Think about it. Like, they don't know what they're talking about for sure up there. They're interpreting, they're doing their best, they're giving you the best they can, but none of them know for sure. So don't necessarily listen to anybody unless you have listened to them for a long time and you have a reason for doing so. Don't just listen to someone and be like, this person, I got to act on based on what this person's saying. Interpret. So if you're listening to those types of places, definitely just make sure you're taking everything with a grain of salt. If you're listening to your news from like news stations that report on like the weather and like local stuff going on, absolutely, I would not recommend making financial decisions based off what you're hearing in those types of news stations, because those have become so dramatic and so theatrical that that's not the type of way you should be making decisions about your money.
definitely well said.
Yep. So, you have anything you all want to talk about before do you have any questions for me? I know you said you didn't do any prep. Do you have any questions?
I'm trying to think. No, I don't think I have any.
Wow.
I know. I really didn't come prepared today.
Brutal. Well, dude, in fairness, I didn't even, really remember about it, so you reminded me completely about it, dude. We would have gone a no-show.
No, we definitely have to have the show.
Oh, no. We're not gonna miss it. So we got no questions then. Do you have anything else you want to talk about in terms of the market is not the economy?
Well, I liked what you said. It was the news. That's a good slogan. The news reports the economy.
Reports on the
Reports on the economy, but affects the market.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what I would say, is that the news reports on the economy, and then what they say affects the market, for sure. So
I do have a question. So
yes, I knew I could wait here long enough, you guys. I knew I could do it.
It was so we've talked on the news. You kind of shared what you like to look into. We both have. When would you say, when you started getting into this realm yourself, when did you say you started to notice that correlation? Like, how long into it that you realized, I need to start really like the advice we're giving. When did you come to that realization, and maybe how you did when you got into this realm? Because again, I think we always knew what the news is. Everyone does, but when it came to actually investing and doing things yourself, how long into it did you really start to like, you know what, I need to start pivoting how I think, and what's the name of the company? I'm already forgetting.
I don't know. I'm already thinking about my answer to your question because I know what you're trying to get at.
Yeah.
Like I said, yeah. So
see, this is what Alex really good for. I jibber jabber, make no sense, and he's able to dissect what it is I'm trying to say and get it to say it better than I ever could. So,
so I think it's kind of twofold. I think that I always. So what I would say is this. I think that
IBD. That's what it was.
Oh, Investor's Business Daily. Yes. Gotcha. Yeah. So I think that I got to. I would say it was 2 layers. It was 2 levels, I would say. So I would say that I got to the first level of understanding this stuff, of like the fact that like the news is, you gotta take everything with a grain of salt and like all that type of stuff. I think probably about 1.5 years to 2 years into trading options.
Wow.
But dude, get ready for this. So that's a
long time.
It definitely is, because again, I think that when you're first getting into it, the emotions and the excitement of it all, you want to make money. So you read these opinions and you look at this stuff, and it's just so hard not to let it
affect you emotionally,
dig a hole into your brain that leads you to act on it, right? It's so difficult to do that. And even then you start to like, again, so I would say like 1 year, 1.5 years into trading options, I really started to basically get to the point where I was telling people would be sending me articles and I'd be like, don't listen to that stuff too much. You know what I mean? Like, read it, know it, log it away. I definitely kind of got to that like level, right? But for me, I think I hit like a second level. So I made that transition. So that was about the time I started making the transition into becoming a financial advisor. Once I kind of started to realize that this is like more involved, and to do it the right way, you got to like, it's more involved, longer term. There's gonna be like more moving pieces. You gotta like just know. You gotta learn more in order to do it more responsibly. So that was when I kind of made that shift into financial planning. But I would say that after the come out of COVID, after we came out of that COVID crash, rebounded from it, and I literally was slamming the table on that, and I was, because strictly because of the technicals, because of the stock charts and like looking at it. And once we kind of came out of that, and I just went through that whole cycle of the COVID crash, the COVID rebound, I was sucked into the news cycles, like, and just watching all those news cycles, literally coming out of that whole thing. It was when I really kind of had the mentality coming out of it. This is theater. All this news is literally theater. A lot of it. That level of like, I am a huge cynical person when I watch the news these days. That came out after COVID, I would say. When we basically came through.
So again, more recent.
And just watching how extensive and how dramatic and how everything was just like every little thing. And to the point we were talking about earlier, watching how they can affect the markets with this stuff. You put a stock in the news, like something like what happened with GameStop, that's only possible because of the news. Mm. And it was all just like fairy dust. You know what I mean? And that's an extreme example of it, right? But literally, especially, like I said, the news stations that report the weather and opinions, those types of places, I would not be getting my financial education and knowledge and wealth of information from those types of sources, because it's all theater.
Noise.
Money gets you really hyped, so it's a great thing to talk about on those types of things. It really will get you hot and bothered. And that's what a lot of these news stations try to do. So the ones that we named are not as bad about it, like CNBC, Yahoo Finance. They tend to be more reporting what's going on, getting important people who know what they're talking about, and they're interviewing them, letting them speak. That's why I like those types of stations. But yeah, I would say a little while into the trading, I really was like, this is, you got to be careful what you listen to. And then after we came out of COVID, I was like, I really am cynical about and listening to any of them. You know what I mean? And I want to take it all in and just make my interpretation of what I think is the best bet here.
Very well said.
And now that is why I fully collaborate with everybody. Because again, I've lived through COVID. I lived through this whole tariff flash crash and recovery. The market's going to be crazy. No one out there, none of you on CNBC, and you all know that I know, that we all know, that none of us know what we're talking about here. We're all just doing our best. Do your homework. Be educated. Immerse yourself as much as you can.
Get involved.
Make yourself as dangerous as you can be. That way you can not only fend for yourself, but you can get value out of the people that you speak to. Because the more you know, the more you can use these people and actually get value for what you're paying for. Because if you're paying for a financial planner, you should be using them. And I don't mean using them
Which again, you see constantly. I know people who have financial planners or financial advisors, probably advisors more, that don't even...
They think I'm using them, but they're really just...
They're not.
They're not. They're really just...
They're just not.
They're using them.
I'm like, oh, when's the last time you talked to your financial advisor?
It's like, oh, they're doing all this
6
stuff
months.
for me. They're doing all this stuff for me. That's a cookie cutter. Again, like, you need to be more involved in that. Like, you're not getting... You could be getting so much more value for the same price. Yeah. Literally for the same price. Most of these advisors are not going to charge you more for your conversations. They're already getting their money for the relationship. Talk to them as much as you want. Educate yourself as much as you can. Take as many news sources as humanly possible. Take them all with a grain of salt. Take it back to your financial planner and put that person to work. That's our advice for the day. Any final thoughts, John?
Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power.
Again, and I think treat it. We talked about treat your money's your baby. Treat it like your child. If you're sending your child to school or whatever it is, you're gonna want to know what's going on, what they're learning, what they're being taught,
of course,
how it's being addressed. Your money that you work so hard, that we all work so hard for, is no different.
Yeah.
We don't value it more than our children, obviously, but treat it as if you want to know everything that's going on in its life.
100%.
How it's doing.
You're recommending...
A lot of this money is going to be retirement money for you when you want to finally step away from your jobs.
100%.
This is important.
Hey, again,
it is vital for you, and it's only going to get... I mean, the retirement age is just getting higher and higher. I think it's like above 70 now. Is it? I have no idea. It probably is.
It keeps going up.
I'll have to check my sources on that, but...
Fact check. But that's literally it, right? I mean, again, like, it just gives you the ability, the power to be in there and be like, oh, you're recommending this, and this investment to me? What made you choose those? Just ask that question. Mm-hmm. Why did you choose those for me?
The why.
Oh, this is the reason, because they're rated like this. They have this rating with these companies. Okay. Oh, this recommendation, I've actually heard of this company before because I'm immersing myself. I saw it on the news. They were saying good things about that company. And all this just allows you to have more power in your financial future, more control. We're beating a dead horse at this point.
And it also just solidifies more. It will help with your overall goals and what you're trying to achieve.
Of course.
To the point where you're asking, why'd you pick that? Well, you wanted to make sure that you hit this goal in 5 years. This is going to be a high dividend or whatever it is to achieve that in 5 years for you. Exactly. Just from this alone. And again, it's going to click. It's going to get the gears churning. It's going to help you modify and pivot your decisions based on what's going on. Instead of waiting for it and falling behind, you're ahead of it.
Yep.
It doesn't matter the scale. We're not talking, again, everyone's financial situation is different. It's not about the amount of it is. It doesn't matter if it's the highest dollar amount to $1 to a month. It is about making those correct thought process and choices early on so it becomes repetition, it becomes habit, and good habits.
100%.
And I think that we can close.
I think we leave it right there, bro.
Yep.
So... I hope you guys got something out of this conversation here today. We will be back next week, thanks to John, because he's on top of his game. And
I think I won today. I think I will lead the next podcast.
You think you won today?
I think I was pretty spot on.
You think you won because of your closing arguments?
I think my closing... Well, I don't think closing
John
statements.
John does no prep, and he thinks he won.
I think...
Incredible.
I think... You're right. I'm a loser.
And with that, you guys, this is the We Love Money podcast brought to you by Alternative Finance. This is John over here. I am Alex, and I don't know if I mentioned I was a CFP, but I am a CFP. This is the We Love Money podcast, and we will see you all next week. No, it was not.